As a practitioner of new decision therapy, I know that it's like most common situation is when the trauma relates to another person. We are trying to find this person and trying to like all in this process how it works. What would be the types of situation when the trauma may relate to something else, not a person? Is it like possible? Did you have these experiences, or very very rarely?
Sure. I mean, sometimes. I mean, institutions ultimately are the product of people who have created those institutions. But for the person who, let's say, is going through a particular institution, it could be their work environment where just it's a very hostile environment where nobody seems to be on their side, and so it can translate in the system as just like a generalized trauma to the whole work environment. Sometimes it will require looking at specific people, and sometimes it may just be looking at the whole corporate umbrella at once and giving that. Or let's say somebody's gone through some trauma in the whatever. It could be the medical institution. It could be with any sort of institutional umbrella. So, is that what you were thinking of or referring to? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing. This is popping into mind very curiously. One of my very first clients who came to see me back in 1997. This is what I love about new decision therapy, because when a client comes in and you start to have a discussion just about what they think the problem is, a lot of times it can just be skirting around the real problem, and you can spend a lot of time talking but not really getting to the issue. And so through the new decision therapy assessment and reading into the wisdom of the body, and the body, by the way, holds memory of everything that we've experienced, we can find through the muscle energy checking procedure that we use, formally called applied and behavioral kinesiology, we can find specific moments in time. So with this particular client, interestingly enough, the trauma went back to a point in time where her parents, they were all on a trip together, and the parents left, and her teddy bear got left behind. She had a very close relationship with this teddy bear. For her, it was like a real person. And it turned out that along with having to forgive her parents, she needed to forgive the teddy bear, right? And it was it seemed like such a silly, almost unimportant piece, and yet it was for her like the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was enough that, she said, oh, I don't have my teddy bear, but her parents wouldn't go back, and then it was like her separation. She had to heal her separation from the most important love, the closest love she had, is she didn't have brothers and sisters, right?
And she was probably like 3, 4, 5?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 years
old. Yeah, 2 or 3 years old. Very, very young. But it was the body wisdom that led us back to that point. And it opened things up, because somehow it just wasn't enough to only forgive the parents. It actually had to go to this inanimate object, which to her was not inanimate at all. For her, it was as alive as her mother and father when she was 2.
Yeah. That also kind of reminds me of one situation when I visited Houston. I spoke with one practitioner of NDT, Dr. Nettie, who practices this therapy for many, many years.
Yes.
And I asked her about the situation, like if she had any unusual cases, and she told me about a story of one woman who was somewhere around like 60, 70 years old, who came to her like complaining about stress and negative emotions. And after testing, she found that this woman actually had trauma with her mother. But her mother died many years ago, and she claimed, this woman claimed, that we had excellent relationship all their life.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the testing showed that somewhere at 1 or 2 years old, there was some event related to mother.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as new decision therapy requires, they still went through the forgiveness process, like to release the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and she got emotional release. Something happened, and she did, of course, at 1-2
She
years
didn't
old.
understand it.
Yeah, we just don't remember, but it's still in the body, this type of trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a similar situation here.
And interestingly enough, sometimes just the very act of going through the motions of new decision therapy and doing the forgiveness process in the mirror and releasing the trauma, later a memory may come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes people are in the mirror and, it's identified, maybe there's a particular teacher that was hard on them in school. But for the life of them, they can't remember the name of the teacher. And then before, they've even we just, in that case, we just identify and say, okay, teacher, I forgive you, because they know who they're talking about. But before they've even finished, they then, boom, they remember the name of the person. Like it all comes back.